everyone. Welcome to Techturks again. Today I'm very excited because in the house we have what many people call a photographer. I call him the magician of the glass lens. Kelechi, welcome to Techturks. Before we start, you didn't. This is not how you started. I believe that you were a lawyer. In fact, a call to the bar for that matter. So please, it's very interesting to know if you can just tell us about your journey from law to where you are today.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me. It's a wonderful forum. Let's talk about technology and life. And but I've always been obsessed with visual arts, right from childhood. So this is something that started from primary school. And as far back as I can remember through, memory, I've been making drawings and trying to tell stories with, two-dimensional, drawings. And then, of course, I come from a family of lawyers, so in my house, it's either you're a lawyer or you're a doctor. Every other thing, So I chose to study law. It was when I got into university, I realized that, there are actually people who are making a living as artists. So it was in university on my third year, I decided I was going to be an artist. So law school was what brought me to Lagos. And once I came to Lagos, I realized that, okay, this is where I will survive as an artist. So I started as a painter, actually. Got called to bar in '93. And from then on till 2000, 5, 6, 7 years, I was painting. It was oil paint, watercolor, and things like that. Photography came gradually. It was this thing I was using as creating references, for inspiration to finish my painting. So instead of, I tried sketching on location, it just was a disaster. People didn't understand it. So each time I went to go and sketch, there was a little crowd, trying to make a comment about what I was drawing. I knew that, look, I just should come and take a picture of this and then go back. So that was how photography became an integral part of my work flow as a painter. But then I found myself falling in love more. For the first time I went to the dark room and saw that blank paper turn to a picture, it was magical to me. I was like, wow, I need to do more of this. And then I started to realize that dodging, burning, things you can do in the dark room, you actually do have a kind of leeway to manipulate the image. You could even mess with perspective and things like that. So it was beginning to look more like painting to me also. So as a result, I started putting a little more attention into my photographs. And within a short time, my photographs started looking as interesting as my paintings. And people then started making inquiries. So we would like to, are these ones for sale too? Those kind of things. And before I knew it, I got invited to an exhibition in Mali. That was in 2001. And from there, we formed a group called Depth of Field. Myself, T.Y. Bello, Uche James Iroha, and Amaizo Ojekere. Later, we had Emeka and Zainab join us. And it became pivotal, to a kind of support group that helped us form our philosophy as photographers. We were inspired by Magnum, then in the United States, which was a group of, reportage photographers that formed their own photo agency owned by photographers. But what we were doing with Depth of Field was we were exhibiting. So we're having these exhibitions. We had an exhibition at the French Cultural Center, and we found ourselves, before we knew it, the whole thing sort of mushroomed into quite a popular thing among curators around the world. We got invited to Brussels, and then from there we got invited to South London Gallery. We got invited to Nuremberg in Germany, and then we went to New York. We were just flying all over the world, getting exhibited, and that was exciting. At that point, I was still a painter. Really, I was enjoying all this attention on the photography. So within a short while, the ad agency started noticing my skills, and they came knocking. And once that door opened, I realized, I had to open a Kelechi Amadi-Obi Studios. And gradually photography just took over.
Took over.
And that's the short.
Short summary. Kelechi, I mean, you were talking about the dark room, development. I mean, technology has really influenced photography. We had a time when, you take pictures. In fact, you had to finish the whole roll, go into the dark room, and then there was uncertainty. Did I take a good picture or did I not? What will I do? And now today you have just, point and shoot and you see it. And I mean, but do you miss that mystery and uncertainty and that, because that also defined you versus another photographer.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I do miss this anticipation. You have 36 exposures, film, for those who don't understand.
Yeah.
There's a roll of films with 36 exposures. You have to finish it and then go to the lab and process. That was the 35 millimeter camera, and it is after it's been processed that you will then see the images in negative before you then process. Then we had to develop the eye to look at the negative and understand whether it is good or not. No. It's what you call a dense negative.
Yeah.
If everything is so bright on the negatives, it means your exposure was poor. In those days, if you wanted a higher ISO, you have to buy ISO 400 film. Put ISO 400 film in this pocket, put 100 ISO in this pocket, and know the settings on your camera to reflect which ISO. There's a lot of mathematics involved.
Everything was practically manual then.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And when you're taking a picture, inside your mind's eye, you can see the photograph because you've mastered the way the camera sees. Because if you do not understand what is happening, you will cry at the end of the day when your stuff comes out. So I do miss that because there's a thrill that comes out of looking at it. These days it's so instant. You take a picture, you look at the back of your LCD, and you can see the picture. These days, I'm even wiring the thing to a bigger screen. In fact, I'm bringing a whole LG screen so that as I'm shooting, you're looking at it in 65-inch TV, straight up, enlarged already. So technology has brought a lot of convenience, but what it has also done is that it has de-emphasized some of those technicalities that play to the way I'm shooting because I learned from the manual. But what can I say, It is the whole idea of technology. It keeps evolving, and these days it's evolving so fast, and we learn to adapt. And some of the photographers who learned with the DSLR, you will see that their practice is slightly different, from mine, the way I sort of visualize the image. I'm still visualizing the image before I even look at the LCD. I'm still thinking about how many f-stops and things because that's how I was trained. What can I say? Is it an advantage? Is it a disadvantage? I don't know, really.
So let me ask a question now. So today, like you said, everyone's using digital cameras, and everybody has access to a digital camera, and you're a photographer. So do you see? So it means that the barriers to entry have dropped.
Oh,
and there's
drastically
immense competition, and we'll get on to next up. Artificial intelligence embedded in the camera is now taking out all that process, right? And even telling you best shot. Like you can even go to your Samsung phone and tell you the best shot. I mean, how does that? I mean, what does that do to your profession? In fact, to your livelihood and to other photographers?
Well, it's really not different from what happened. By the time I was getting into photography, that was when the QSS machine is this machine that processes the 35 millimeter 30 frames film, rolls it out very fast. Before then, photographers needed to have a dark room. So the photographer was in charge of the whole process, for instance. So you take the picture, you process the film, and then you go to the darkroom and print. When those QSS machines came out, a lot of studios closed down because they couldn't adapt to that drastic change. And when the digital camera came out also, a lot of people were still finding it, trying to figure out how you have to buy a laptop, start to learn Photoshop, and all those kind of things. But the phone photography now is also taking out a whole generation of photographers because I mean, the phones are taking better pictures than the photographer. It doesn't just take the photograph, it stores it in cloud, gives it a geotag, will remind you of it, uses AI to edit the image, and keeps it at your fingertips to send to your loved ones. If you want it exposed live and you send it live, you can share it through AirDrop and all sorts of WhatsApp and all sorts of things. It's unbelievable the speed at which the pictures are being made now. So those people who want to take a picture and you wait to the end of the event for it to get a print, first of all, they're giving you paper. You can't share it with friends. And it's not even as sharp as the picture being taken by your phone. So at every stage that the technology moves, individuals who have refused to enrich their mind and develop the photographic eye will be taken out of business. But there is something that technology is still struggling, to come to terms with, which is the soul of humanity, your ability to interpret things based on your whole life's experience. And that is what people want to pay for. And that is what keeps people like us in business, because people are looking for that photographic eye. Each photograph is an opinion of the photographer, which then reflects his personality. That a machine cannot regenerate.
So, I mean, what I hear you saying is that technology actually enables you to be much better photographer.
Perfect.
Actually,
Perfect.
So you don't see the fact that other people can take pictures because of the technology. It means that you can enhance and embrace that technology and do much more than you could do 10 years ago.
In fact, what has happened with the advent of the ubiquitous phone camera is that everybody is holding a high definition camera that can shoot 4K, that has 20-something megapixels, that is sharp. By holding that camera, you start to appreciate the mind of the photographer. So everybody has tested what it means to be a photographer and has understood their limitations.
Exactly.
So the value of the photographer and the mind of the photographer is now put in a place where it belongs. Recently, there is this new thing, the new iteration now, the new movement. The latest thing is computational photography, which we'll call AI, which is artificial intelligence now thinking and recognizing things. So your camera is not just pointing at an object. Your camera is analyzing what it is seeing and separating human beings from architecture, from cars, from dogs to cats. So they've put it in the camera, more so in the phones, and even your post-production now is laden with artificial intelligence, where you will say, separate sky, and Adobe Photoshop will just perfectly cut the house out of the sky. Separate the individual. Adobe Photoshop will set, and all these things are making it convenient. But the question is this: what is the story that you want to tell? And why do you want to use these tools? And to what end? It is at that point that technology stops and the human being takes over.
Okay, great. I'm happy you just talked about stories, so let's move into stories. I remember we had a conversation, I think a few years ago, and we talked about how we use photography to tell stories of many things.
Yes.
Tell stories of nations. And I remember you mentioned how, these pictures you see about Nigeria are pictures of the bad areas, the bad things. But meanwhile, other countries actually promote pictures of the great places, the touristic sites.
Exactly.
Now, how do you think how we can harness that as Nigerians, and even not just professionals, but even the populace who are using Instagram to actually, promote, not wait for governments or the government to promote the touristic place of Nigeria, but even promote, the metropolis, the village, the urban life, the class, the culture.
Exactly.
How do we do that?
Well, in fact,
and I know you just came out with a book.
Yes, Amazing Nigeria.
Amazing Nigeria.
Amazing Nigeria project. I do believe that the position of the photographer in the scheme of things is a very powerful one. I once listened to a program where they were talking about why is man the most dangerous animal on earth. Some people say, because they have thinking faculties, because of their brain. But no, it's because human beings can collaborate in large quantities. You know, the bonobos can do it in maybe a whole group of monkeys, maybe 100. The pride of lions could be maybe 20 or 30, not too much more than that. But human beings can collaborate in millions. And the collaboration is a function of the stories they've been told. So storytelling then is the source of humanity's power, that harmonization of the story. So the whole of the West, for instance, you know, and its outposts, outposts, United States, Australia, Canada, and the rest of them, are united by the story of the Bible. Christianity ran through those places. You can see the little clash of stories between the West and Russia, because Karl Marx and the rest of them, you know, put a wedge between Christianity and said, hey, we'll have a different story. And then look at the story of the Indians, you know, the Hinduism, and the story of the Chinese through Chairman Mao. All these things are a function of storytelling. And photography then becomes part of that storytelling. And I always say, you know, what is our story in Nigeria? What is the story that we tell ourselves about the country?
How do we create a collage of people's stories, people's daily life?
That is it. You know, the image makers are then in control of how people see themselves. So I take your portrait and you look at yourself in the photograph and say, I'm a handsome guy.
Yeah.
I've told you a different story. It may change your perception of self.
Yes, that is true.
It's much like looking in the mirror. But what I've done is I've told you how I see you. And what I've been telling people is this. You cannot move forward in a society. Our brain cannot decipher between negative and positive vibes. It only conjures whatever you tell it to do. So when Nigerians say the country is a mess, but maybe the country is also beautiful, that is another story. And if it is beautiful, does it not make sense that I should preserve it and develop it? As opposed to say it is a mess, in which case I should jagba.
Yeah, exactly. Jaffa comes up in every conversation today.
Exactly.
Regardless of where you are.
So it is the stories that people are telling themselves that then determines whether they want to invest in the country or whether they want to divest and put their money in another system. Yeah. And for me, it is central to the progress or otherwise of any society. And there lies the power of photography. When I decided I was going to say, you know what, I do believe that this country is blessed. I do believe that this country is powerful beyond measure. I will go around this country and find evidence and show people. So I put the exhibition together and people look at the book and they start flipping and say, this country is blessed. So you've told them a different story. They're telling themselves, this country is blessed. The next thing they'll say is, if only.
Exactly.
You know?
I mean, going back, so like, you know, when I think of, okay, Amazing Nigeria, the book that you did, everything always starts with taking the picture, right?
Yes.
And the eye.
Yes.
And then and so you have a book. Now, I look at, you know, so like, I look at virtual reality tomorrow. And virtual reality is actually, and the metaverse.
Yes.
And it is a place where, okay, I haven't been to this place. I don't think I might go to this place because of security concerns, cost of living.
Yeah.
But if we could put on some glasses
and
feel
have a VR experience.
feel what the photographer was feeling,
yes.
then at least that's the first step before I actually go there.
Absolutely.
Now, do we have enough people in Nigeria? I know we talked about, you know,
yes.
you know that the technology is there, but it's only your brain that can take you. How do I now even start expanding it and scaling it so that
yes.
many people can see it?
This thing you're saying, I mean, the other day I was at this exhibition and I was looking at a VR, you know, rendition of the Kano dye pits. And it was just, I've been there before several times. And looking at that VR was incredible. It's a completely different kind of experience, you know. So with what they are thinking about the metaverse, you know, that would lead to even unthinkable possibilities.
Exactly.
You know, it is also this a different level of sensory, you know, perception that is happening, where you wear a headset and you're looking at. There's a very good friend of mine, Benson, who made a documentary of Chibok, about the IDP camps, and he made a short documentary of it on VR. He brought that thing for me to watch. It was incredible because he's interviewing people. You're in their house. So while he's interviewing, you're listening to the person talk, you're looking at their roof.
Wow.
You look and see their stove. He's talking, then you turn and look at them.
Yes.
Unbelievable, a completely different way
Yes.
of seeing things. And that is what technology
does.
It's creating, so we look into the future. I don't know how it's going to happen. There's augmented reality. There's the immersive one, the virtual reality.
Right. I mean, I'm really excited. I mean, imagine your exhibition. And so instantly, I can't get there. Maybe I'm in London. But you can produce it for augmented reality.
Yes.
So I can put on my glasses
and see the whole thing.
Go there and then see the whole thing and choose what I want to choose.
And it's a completely different experience because what I did at my exhibition was I put these codes, QR codes or whatever, so as you scan it, you're looking at a video. Because some of those places, it's difficult to really appreciate it from just a two-dimensional, like for instance, a place like Adoawe, which is a hanging lake on top of a mountain. You're looking at the photograph of the lake, it just looks like a lake. But the contextualization of the lake demands that you use a drone and fly and look at the topography to understand how wondrous, and that the fact that somebody had to hike, So it's different. Yeah. So even though I'm taking still photography, I'm making a documentary.
Of course. I mean, moving pictures.
It's important.
Yeah, moving pictures.
You can see.
So, final part of this very interesting conversation. Okay, so we've talked about, everything that we've talked about just show that photography is going to be important in the future in any ecosystem. One, because even the generation, the millennials and Gen Zs, they actually consume, educate, inform through visuals and creative.
Yes.
And so, I think educational systems is going to be through, of course, virtual reality, creating content in that space, creating things that people can assimilate. People always assimilate reading. In fact, the brain reads in pictures. It doesn't read in writing. That's why I think the first writing, hieroglyphics by the Egyptians was actually pictures.
Were little drawings.
Were drawings.
Exactly.
So and I also think that this curriculum has to now start including things like photography. But if you look at the Nigerian educational system, it's all the hard, like English, maths, but those are not the curriculum that is going to. We need to expand it to things like photography, things like movies.
Absolutely.
And so, how do we get there? Today, I don't know. I don't think there's any school of photography. I know you've done some master classes. Yeah. And how do we now start? And people already have the tools. They have a camera. They have a phone and a camera that we can actually use to start that education.
Exactly.
So how do we start that? Seeing that it's very, very important.
Absolutely. Future. What can I say? We can't have enough of institutions that take. I know, at some of the traditional schools that are there now, some of them are developing photography departments. I know Unilag. I know. Yabatech, they have their photography, but it now depends on how powerful it is. There are other people who are trying to set up things. A lot of photographers are doing workshops, but like you said, there isn't this big one that stands out that everybody will say, oh, let me go there and all that. We are yet to really establish that. And I think it's something that must be done. We don't have a choice on the matter. It's such an important part of our existence. And it's either the private sector or government. We need to put that together and, kind of harmonize that knowledge and create a launching pad for the younger ones,
So, final question: what's next for Kelechi Amadi-Obi?
Oh, what can I say? I am an insufferable optimist. I'd had an exhibition, Amazing Nigeria, but I'm also looking at, turning it into a proper, profitable book. So my plan is to have a profitable book that every single picture is collectible, you know, and that takes a little more time. So I'm going to continue on that journey, apart from, of course, you know, absorbing all these new things that are happening. The other day I was looking at, you know, artificial intelligence, the one that you just talked to, and it brings up images. I found out that, wow, you know, if I play around with this, I could actually improve my language, the language of art, you know, my diction and my understanding of art history and all that. So it's amazing.
Fantastic. Kelechi, thank you very much for coming on to Techturks, and we'll continue the conversation offline.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.